Welcome to Today Matters. I'm Pastor Don Welch, your counseling pastor. We're working from Psalm chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. Where do you put your trust? In Joshua chapter 1, 5c and 9c, it tells us, I will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be terrified. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. We can always trust God. Psalm 11, verse 1 tells us, in the Lord I take refuge. I ask you today, where do you take refuge? Where do I take refuge? In God or the world? Verse 2, David felt attacked. This is when self-doubts creep in. The psalmist is plagued by self-doubts. Several years ago, my wife Robin and I were plagued with self-doubts. Robin was diagnosed with breast cancer. At first, we were told it may be death. Our first response was to turn to God and remind each other of the numerous answers to prayer throughout our marriage. And yet again, God gave us another miracle by healing Robin. That's another time and another story, a beautiful miracle on God's part. She is now 3 years free of cancer. Without trust in God, we may second-guess ourselves, become tentative and unsure. We may adopt the abused spouse syndrome, coming to believe that we may have gotten what we deserve. In Mark's Gospel, chapter 15, verse 34, Jesus expresses his agony as he suffered on the cross, saying, my God, why have you forsaken me? Yet Jesus once again placed his trust in God the Father. So can we. Hebrews chapter 4, verse 16 reassures us that we may receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Do you put your trust in God? There are three principal actors interacting in this psalm. Psalm 11, the psalmist, God, and the enemy. Albert Camus, in his novel The Plague, said this, there's something about the facts. Sooner or later, they break down all the illusions. David in Psalm 11, facing facts, suggesting that without some kind of saving intervention, he was going to die. He put his faith in God. There may have been a time when he could be dismissive of his situation, but no longer. His enemies were getting ready to dance on his grave. Verse 4. St. Paul, while in Asia, where he had been under vicious attack, said in 2 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 8, we were under great pressure, far beyond our ability to endure, so that we despaired even of life. Paul's most vicious opponents, who on several occasions tried to kill him, were his fellow Jews. For David, he described his enemies. Our enemies may not be wicked people, but good people. Sometimes they're even seemingly righteous people. Jesus didn't die at the hands of criminals or rebels. He was condemned by established ecclesiastical and political authorities. Even Job cries out in Job chapter 13, verse 15. Chapter 13, verse 15, though he slay me, yet will I hope in him. I trust God beyond belief. David in Psalm 11 continued to call upon God like Peter, who sinking beneath the waves cried out, Lord, save me. Matthew chapter 14, verse 30. In verse 4 of Psalm 11, David put his trust in God's unfailing love. And so can we. For as Psalm 11, verse 4 tells us, the Lord is in his holy temple. The Lord is on his heavenly throne. David rejoices in God's salvation. David lifts his eyes from his hurts to the healer. He and we can say with Paul, we are hard-pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair, persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. Paul said in 2 Corinthians chapter 4, verses 8 through 10, we always carry around in our body the death of Jesus, so that the life of Jesus may also be revealed in our body.